Hello everyone, it's me again and the lovely, very helpful Scott Buckley playing music again this week. He's the best. We're now on week 4 and the last in the present set, and so this week I've chosen to use the line and wash technique in a different way. I'm going to demonstrate a little village scene which has got quite a lot of perspective and sky and various bits of foliage and old doors and windows and shadows. So a lot to think about here. So I'm hoping that the pen is going to help me with some of that insofar as putting in the detail. But I'm going to paint it first as just a little washy watercolour, and then putting some pen on afterwards. Maybe not everywhere, maybe here and there. I'll have to see how it turns out. But I've attached notes, or I will attach notes, explaining the procedure for you. So I'll be talking as I go through, but if I forget anything, I've got it all written down for you. Okay, so these are the colours that I've chosen. Looks to be a lot for a landscape really, but it's not. There's just a lot of colour in that particular sky, which I really like. Can't hope to copy it exactly, but I'll use it as inspiration and try for that. So first of all, I've done a very, very simple light drawing with a very soft half the pressure, twice the speed, it says on this pencil. It's an expensive pencil. It's a Black Wings pencil, but actually I don't think it's any better than any of the other 2B pencils that I've ever used. But whatever. And then I've got a 0.5 pen brown, 0.5 pen grey, and I've got a black 0.3 out as well. So I may need to use a selection of different thicknesses of pen for the lights and darks. I've also made some pools ready for my sky colours. So let's go. And I'm using a 1/2 inch pure squirrel brush for the sky, and I'm going to put some water down first. I'm going to try and keep it as a vignette and not go right to the edges, because with something like a village scene, it then gives the impression that there's more going on. So I think a little vignette is a nice way of portraying that. Don't worry if you go over the edges of your buildings and things a little bit, it really won't be an issue. And especially where you've got foliage. I've got a tall telegraph pole there, so I've gone right over that because it's dark and I can paint over it. But if I don't take the water right to the edge, my paint won't go to the edge anyway, so hopefully that's going to help me to remember about not going right to the very edge. It's actually quite nice to put a little bit of sky colour over any foliage you've got sort of on the horizon, because that way any gaps that you leave between the foliage will be picked up with the sky behind and look better than just leaving white paper gaps. Right, so I've got to concentrate a bit now on this sky. It's bluish at the top. I think it's dusk in this particular scene. Then we go into some deeper cloud here, so I'm going to go straight in with that over the top. leaving some little white patches, which I can actually see in the picture. So following this sky a bit, but not, you'd never hope to get it exactly like the picture, but the photo or reality, but you can get close. Maybe just wet that top area a little bit, just to let that float a bit. But I don't want to go to the top of the page, but I have actually put wide tape around, so I've got more space around my picture than it might first appear. But now I think we've got the beginning of some sunset appearing, so how exciting. So working on all of this while it's wet is going to give you lovely natural looking markings for sky colours and sky shapes. But the minute it starts to dry up, you've got to, which it is starting to do here already, so use a lot of water, that'll help. So I've got some pink here, and it's going to dry up lighter anyway. So this is quite a good brush because it's not too fat and flat, but it holds quite a lot of paint and water. But at the same time it's got a little point, so it's quite helpful. I've got some mountains in the distance there that I do want to avoid, but there's foliage here, so I've gone into a little bit of raw sienna there. Very dramatic sky sounding music going on as well. A minute. Right, there's a very light patch of sky here, which looks a bit odd. There's a lot going on in this sky, but it's a fairly simple scene. So having a more complicated sky is going to add interest to my picture, I hope. So it all needs to be thought about, you know, when you choose subjects. You know, don't just pick up any old thing and hope that it's going to work. Depending on what you're doing, of course, the technique that you're using, so on and so forth. Try to think about it all carefully so that you actually get everything right. And all of that is going to help you. So you can keep working on this sky till it starts to dry up, then you need to stop. And it's still moving as well, so I'm not going to know exactly what my end result is until it does stop moving. But it's got some good markings appearing, I think. Let that go a bit at the side. I've got my little dish of screwed up paper ready, just in case I want to bring any light back in. But I don't think I do really. I think what I want to do is bring that pink across a little bit to meet up with that orange. Okay, I'm not too unhappy with that. If you want your sky to move around a bit more, you can tip one way or another. But I'm actually going to leave it. I think it's done enough moving. So hopefully if I leave it flat, it'll dry up as is. And I think it's going to be okay. But the problem is, where do I go from here until that's dry? Do I need to take anything away? I think what I might do is get a dryish brush, really quite dry, and just run down this pool. This little flag, well, it's not a flag pool, it's a telegraph pole. So if I just take some of that away, it's not going to look too different to the rest of it when I come to paint it. Good. Now I'm going to leave it. I think it's got interest, I think it's got movement. But what I can do, I guess, while it's damp, put my sky colours away, bring in the greens, and using my, oh, the cat's been at my water, I haven't got much left in my jar. I've got a little tiny foliage brush here, which is a 1/4 inch tree and texture brush, to bring in a little bit of foliage at the edge here. And if I put that on, a bit wet that was, if I put that on while the sky colour is damp, it's going to look quite soft and natural looking. And then I can go over the top again to put some strength into it a bit later. So splay the brush out, use it like this. You won't hurt it, but it will make nice sort of natural looking marks for you. So that foliage comes right down the side here. No. Good. There's also some there, so maybe I'll go with that as well. It's yellower, so go towards the yellow more. It's this side of those mountains. And that's why the sky needs to show behind the foliage. I left quite a bit of white there without meaning to, but I think it'll be all right. But think about things like that. Don't do as I do, do as I tell you. So I'm getting that in now while the sky is damp, because the bit that goes in front of the skyline is going to then look nice and soft and natural looking. And it creeps over the building here. So working carefully. Good. And I wouldn't put those mountains in until I know that the sky is completely dry, because it's there's only a little bit showing, but it'll just do this and blend into the sky and it won't look like mountains anymore. So I've got to let this dry now, so I think I'll take the opportunity to stop and let it dry so I don't take more time on the video. Right, I did put the hairdryer on, but the advice is to let it dry naturally if you have the time, and you possibly can. But it's a nice washy light sky, so I think I'm reasonably happy with it. And now I need to think about the walls on the buildings, which are all very similar, sort of raw siennas and yellows and nice light colours. So plenty of water with my raw sienna, because I don't want it to look too sunny. And I've got some Naples yellow out as well. Again, lots of water with it, and you can mix the two together. But if you use a couple of colours in a situation like this, it won't be monotonous. There'll be a certain amount of variety going on. But there are a lot of markings in these walls. They're very old looking. So I'm going to wash these colours right over first, all the way. And there's a wall that's similar colouring as well. So it'll be up to me to put shadows in and make it all look more interesting. But trying to remember all the time that it's still line and wash, and I want to leave some white paper. I want to put the detail in with the pen at the end. So it's all going to look quite weak at this point. Perhaps put a bit more into this main building here, a little bit more colour perhaps. There's a blocked up window there, and I'm now going to decide whether I make it into an actual window or whether I still leave it blocked. There's a big expanse here, so it might look more interesting to put in an actual window. I'll have to think about that in a minute. But this is another good brush for line and wash. It's a 3/8 dagger brush, not sword brush, but dagger brush, which you can use on the flat, you can use on the point, and you can turn it and use it a bit like a round brush as well. So not too much work gone into there, but while it's still damp, I'll get some neutral tint and some Payne's Grey, Winsor & Newton Payne's Grey, which has got blue in it. You can even use ultramarine blue. And I'm going to start putting some of the markings in that are within the walls. And it's always going to be quite strong in colour. There's always going to be depth of colour underneath the eaves. There'll be shadow. There's a couple of windows there which will go in darker at some point soon. There's a wall in front. There's a bush here. So there's actually a bit more colour into this wall, so I'm actually going to just run a bit more of that raw sienna over, which is lightened quite a bit as it's drying. And washed in that neutral tint at the same time, making it look hopefully reasonably natural. When you've got an expanse of anything that's all a bit similar, you've got to see what you can do to bring in a bit more interest, perhaps. There's a lot of shadows here, so they'll go on at the end when I've allowed everything else to dry. There's quite a lot of shadow on this wall here, so not putting too much work into that at the moment. Just roughing it up a bit. There's a door there, so I'll put that in when the wall colour is dry. There's a bit of colour here, a bit of something blue going on behind. There's one building going on behind another, going back. So that's actually adding some perspective and interest there. And again, there's another rooftop here, dark colour, with some little windows just popping out over the top. So these can be shown up even more when the time comes to put in the pen work. So that's a white house. There's a little rooftop here. So now we're actually putting in a little bit of detail here, just loosely. That's got a bit morbid, that music. Maybe I'll just change to another thing. See what that one's like. Right, this wall here doesn't have an awful lot going on. So if you use one of these brushes, twist and turn and get different marks with it. Work wet on wet. Put the paint down first, wet it afterwards, put water down first, and then mix it all up with the paint. And you'll find using that technique is going to create really nice markings for you. You won't see so well till it's dry, but it's going to be good. Right, it's quite blue. The markings on this house, quite blue looking. So I'm going to define the edge of that house a bit more with the depth, because there's light behind it and we want that to come forward and show up. Here's the part of the window that's being bricked up. But I think I'll just indicate it loosely. Popping another colour on always brings interest. Indicating stone and brick. That's the main building there. A lot of shadow. The shadow's coming this way, so there is a lot of shadow here. So all I can really see is shadow, so I'm putting that in quite strongly. Keeping it nice colours. It's very blue looking, in fact, on the photo. Whether the photo's telling me the right story or not, I don't know, but it looks nice. Shadows coming from other buildings across from the other side of the road, I guess. Making shapes, so leaving it at that. Then this part of the wall has got lighter again. So there's foliage and houses and all sorts, and then obviously a gap here. So think about what's going on in your picture. It'll always help you to get it right. There's a gap there, obviously, where the sun is coming through, but this house has got a lot of, looks like mould, I don't know what it is, but I quite like the way it runs around on these old buildings. So always work from light to dark, because you can't put dark over light. So work from light to dark always when you in your paintings, because that's going to be a lot easier for you. Right, now I want to send this house back a bit. And bring this wall forward, so. Very dramatic music. Okay, where am I? Need to do something about this window shape. I want to make it look different to the rest of the wall, so I'm going to give it a bit of a shape. And maybe a little bit more brickwork in there. So maybe when that dries up, that's going to look the way I want it to. I'll see. Now I think I could perhaps work on the rooftop. So I've got burnt sienna, and alizarin crimson mixed here. Popping a little bit of ultramarine blue along the eaves just to make it darker in a very sort of rough shape, indicating tiles, which I can't see perfectly obviously because it's distant. I've also got two very interesting looking tall windows here. So it's very, very light drawing underneath. I can only just see it, which is a good thing because it makes you paint as well. Use your paint to make the shapes and not always relying on pencil. This is a darker wall here, and it didn't stay as dark as I would have liked, so I'm popping a bit more back on there. It's all in shadow. And my little windows can be even darker while it's damp. Maybe not blocked in completely, but putting a bit of depth down one side looks better. Bit of rooftop showing here, but not as much as this side. using the point of this little brush. Shape your brush up as you get the paint on it, as you put the paint and dip it into the paint. Pop, twirl it around, get the shape back again. If you start to lose it, there's just a bit of foliage going on at the back here, so I'll just softly put that in. That's distant. Right, I'm going to put markings into the walls with my pen. It's a bush here, big one. Trying to avoid the very top of the wall because that's interesting. Don't want to lose it. The bottom of this bush is kind of growing over the wall, but this part of it is actually in shadow a lot, so I've gone darker. This technique looks easy, but it isn't so easy as you sometimes think it might be. It's a matter of trying to get the definition, enough definition, but at the same time as keeping it nice and washy. And not colouring in as if it's a colouring book. Right, where am I? The hills at the back there are a nice sort of blue. Blue and white. So just softly popping those in, because they're very distant, they mustn't be prominent at all. But it just tells the story, the fact that we're abroad and there are some lovely hills in the distance. Let it dry. Right, there's a door here. Nice warm colour. So I'm working in the direction that I see the planking in that door, keeping it simple. Letting some light show. And then the wall carries on over the top of it. But there is a dark area. So it's all very old and rough looking, so you don't want to make anything look too modern or too perfect. Edge of the wall here. Just want to show that up a bit more. pop a few more markings on there, rough it up a bit. And then we have a lovely Viridian door. So nice bits of colour coming in here and there. I'll put a little bit of Payne's Grey with that Viridian because I don't want it to look too bright, but just bright enough to add some more colour and interest. Remember, your colours will always dry up 3 times lighter than when you apply them, so if you think you've got something too bright, don't worry too much, it will dry up lighter. But I've created some variation in that door which I can actually see. Door handle, some hinges a bit later. Dark under here to make it recess. And down here. Let it dry. I don't know how I am for time. Not doing too well, I don't think. Little hole in the wall here, no idea what that would be. Another one here, a bit bigger. Putting a little bit of water underneath and around it so that it looks slightly bedded in rather than sitting on this surface looking too blocked in and not part of the building. Okay, getting there. Got some more rooftops here. Again, nice wavy lines, making it look like tile and quite natural. Ultramarine blue underneath it. I know some of you follow my subject that you haven't really painted much before. I know some of you actually follow what I'm doing step by step, and so this is why I say what I'm doing and the colours and the brushes and all the rest of it, in the hope that it helps with that situation. Try to remember to anyway. Right, a little bit more depth under this one. Bit of strength going on here. Try to avoid my pool. Right. More tiles, trying to think about the perspective. The corner is here, so it starts going down towards the distance away, but there's another taller building right behind it, so I'll deal with that in a minute. Let some of these colours come down, make it interesting. Don't be afraid to try things. Watercolour likes it when you try things. if you're painting buildings, getting the angles right as well as you possibly can is all going to sort of make it look right in the end and not irritating on the eye. So try for getting the angles going in the right direction always. Remember those little rules. Anything above your eye line. My eye line was here. Everything's going to go down towards the distance. Anything beneath my eye line is going to go up towards the distance. Right, another door here. 2 doors. And another one, or a hatch or something in the wall here. It's difficult to tell exactly what's going on back here. I can just see shapes. So if you can't tell what something is, don't worry about it. Just paint what you see. If you can't see it, you can't paint it. So just stick with what you're seeing and hopefully it'll then work out quite well. Lots of bits and pieces of sheds and parts of buildings and things all happening here. The window. So that is diminishing, which helps with the perspective. A bit more of that greenery just sort of creeping in front of the building there. And dark, dark, dark just here. I don't know what that is. I don't know whether that's shadow, whether that's foliage. Doesn't matter. I quite like this dark area here. I'm going to make that really dark. And it's blue looking. That's nice against the yellow. That's where I am. No idea what's going on there really, but I quite like that bit of dark. Right, I think before I put this, there's some greenery all the way along the edge here. I think before I do that, I'm going to put some shadow in on the walls and things. So keeping your shadows nice colours will be helpful. So there's shadow on this wall here. But do try and allow the colours that you see underneath your shadows, allow it to show through to an extent, because otherwise it won't look right. There's another shadow coming across here. And I try to just put one stroke down rather than to keep going back at it, because that's the thing that's going to make it look heavy and not so transparent. This bit of wall here is darker, so I'm going to make that just a different colour. But the top of the wall there hasn't got much going on, so some light shining on it. So a little bit of shadow in there, but leaving some light. Right, so that's that. No shadow here. The rest of the shadows on this wall here, and I have actually put quite a lot of that in already, but I'll just pop a little bit more over it. Quite a bit of shadow showing behind the pool. Purples and blues always look really nice and for shadows when you're painting things from abroad. Colours are lovely, so try and keep your shadows looking pretty. Pretty's not the best word, is it? But I think maybe attractive might be the best word. That building behind here, that funny old angle, is dark. Could have left it out really, but I don't know. I saw it there and thought, well, maybe it'll add interest. But if something's looking a little bit too tricky to cope with, leave it out. But actually it's given a bit of strength up there, so it's all right. Right, I can put this greenery in along here now, I think. Colour shall we go for? Nothing too bright, I don't think. So I think I'm just going to dampen this area for putting this greenery all along the edge. That's going to bed this little row of houses in quite nicely, having this foliage all along. But it's got to look natural. It mustn't take over too much. So not too bright with your greens. Do make nice greens with blues and yellows, mixing them together as I have in my pots. Or if you use something like hooker's green or sap green or any of those greens, again, put yellows and blues. Don't use your greens straight from the tube. Try to mix them. They really don't look natural enough. Greens are very, very difficult, and they will spoil a picture if they're too bright and garish and unnatural looking. Sometimes in a picture or in life you'll see very, very bright green, but actually then putting it that strongly and that same tone into your pictures can actually not look right. So you need to be careful. Okay, so what I've got is the pool to do and some roadway. It seems to be going down towards the distance a bit. I'm not looking forward to doing that pool. tricky. So let's get it done. It is in the front. It is quite dark. So I'm using a round brush with a good point, quite a small one. I think I wouldn't manage quite so well with that. I'm not sure why. Now, if that was a stalk on a flower, I wouldn't be at all bothered about it, but with it being a telegraph pole, it seems to be worrying me a bit. It's narrower at the top than it is at the base because of perspective in height going up. So think about things like that. Oh, that's good enough, I think. Apart from the fact that it is darker one side. And again, it sort of tends to get lighter and more distinct at the bottom than it is at the top. So less distinct at the top. And if you want to bring more light in, damp brush, drop little touches of water in, as you would with a stalk, to get that rounded effect. And then you've got some light shining on one side. Have I got the right side? Yeah. This side? Yes. Shadow that side. Okay. So I'm going to keep the foreground fairly simple, but again there'll be shadow. I think I'll go for a bigger brush here. Nice clean water. And I think some burnt sienna. No, raw sienna I'll go with first, with a little bit of that colour that I've just used for the pool. What we have is a light area here and light showing through in places, but then a lot of shadow again here. I think there are more houses around casting shadow across. So, as I've said before, start with your light colour. It's going to be a bit like painting the sky. So I'm only going to put the light, I think, where I see the light. And then go dark over the top. There's a lovely, where that is, it's got light coming through, and that's shining through here onto the roadway as well. So a little bit of brightness there. Okay. Now I don't want it to look like sky particularly, so I'm going to stop and dry that a bit, because otherwise I'm going to get this kind of effect. Okay, I'll stick with this brush I think, and I'm going to use the shadowy colours mixed all together on here, the ultramarine blue, some Payne's grey, and a little bit of neutral tint to get a little bit of variation going on, and darks and lights. Not too wet a brush because I want to keep control. Back here I'm going to go quite dark. Just in that little patch there. Maybe that was a bit darker than I would have liked. I'm hurrying now. That that's all right. Dabbed some of that back. And then it gets a bit lighter here. That shaft of light coming through there is really nice. Mustn't lose that. And then it's dark in front of the house here. Allowing those colours to show through. And there are sort of linear marks, so I'm just going to do this. Don't want to lose that light. But it gets dark into the edge of the greenery there, which is going to set that into the edge of the roadway nicely. Very dark here. So it's all in shadow around this corner here. And any depth over the edges of your work is going to help to keep the eye into the, bring the eye back into your picture. Has crinkled a bit, but it will go straight. I'm going to have to allow it to dry completely before I put the pen on. There's quite a distinct shape here, and that's obviously the shadow of that building. Shadows are fascinating, the way they throw themselves about. Don't want to go right to the edge of the page. Using the point. Okay. Tidy that up there, because that's again a shadow of the edge of that building. I think I'd better stop it now. Stop there and allow it to dry, and then see about putting some pen on. Okay, pen's away. Here we go. I've just tried out various pens to see which one I want to use, so I would suggest you do a similar thing. It will depend on your subject. I've taken my wide tape away, so I've got quite a lot of space around. I'm using, I think to begin with, I've got all of those pens, a 05, 03, 01, but in different colours. And I'm starting, I think, with the rooftop up here, and I'm going to just use the black 01. And I'm not going to go everywhere with it. As I've said before, hold it loosely, have a little scribble around, and just define particular areas that you feel you need to bring up a bit. Parts of things. Maybe part of this wall could have some stonework just showing up on here. But I have to say, if you've reached a point with your painting that you actually quite like, and you don't necessarily, after all, want to put any paint on, any pen on, you absolutely 100% don't have to. So it's up to you. I have to say, I often reach this point where I think, well, I don't know, I quite like it as a little watercolour, and so I end up leaving it. So that's an optional decision, really. But I am actually bringing up just some shapes here, just to show you what will happen if you do it. Bringing in, put the little door handle thing on there, and maybe a couple of hinges this side. So you can pop little bits of detail in wherever you feel you need it. Maybe some branches, maybe change to the brown pen for a little bit of a scribble on this foliage here. Put a few branches in. So I'm going to add a bit more definition to your picture. And it is another technique that we need to learn and know about, so that you can use that in the future for things. Nothing too definite going on here actually, so if there isn't, just leave it. I think this door is more prominent, so I could put a bit more going on here with this one. Maybe use a bit stronger pen to put some depth in the side here. But if you've got something that you really, really like the look of, or you've left white paper, just make sure you do leave it. You don't have to go everywhere doing everything. Just defining those little shapes a bit more, showing up the light. Quite small and distant subject actually, so I don't want to get too heavy with the pen or use one that's too dark and heavy and that will show up too much. Still want to keep the distance, but it's quite nice to put a few markings and, you know, a little bit of brickwork perhaps here, just to indicate what's going on in this picture. Very carefully, and leave the eye to do the rest. It can actually show up some of these little markings that you see. I'm getting brave now. See, if you hold it loosely, the pen is going to do some of this work for you. So it might be in a situation like this, where this one is in front, to pop some pen on, this one that's in front, but not on the one that's behind, which will take that one back and this one forward, leaving the top of the wall. I think there's a big old crack coming down there, so maybe think about things like that. Pop that in. This is a nice pen. That's a 01. It feels about right somehow. You don't have to go all the way down here, but I'll just do the bottom bit and put a few markings on it. It's got something going on there. Here's the edge of the wall, so I won't come all the way down, but I've just indicated it a bit there and here, very lightly. So it is going to help to bring in that definition that you may not have managed to get everywhere. But the more distant it gets, I think the less you should do. Leave that for the watercolour, I think. I don't think this foliage needs a lot either. No. And I wouldn't surround the hills with a line. Definitely not. I like that as it is, so I'm not going to touch it. And if you want to go back, put a little patch of anything in anywhere, what you feel you've left something out, do so. Now I'm going to be really brave. Lump 3. That's quite a fat pen, that one. I'm actually going to put in some wires. Another one hanging down here, loose. And believe it or not, there's one coming right over here. And I actually don't think that one that's sitting on its own looks right, so I'm actually going to put another one in. And that's enough. Okay, so I think I've done it. So don't, whatever you do, put any lines around shadows. That really wouldn't look right at all. And I tend not to put lines around mountains or lines, any marks with a pen in the sky. But if I hold it up, maybe you can just see what I've done with the pen there. So I think it has enhanced it. I did quite like it as it was, but I think it's possibly enhanced it. Let's see. So there we are, there's a little scene. Not bad for a demonstration, I'm quite happy with it. I quite like the sky, I'm happy with the sky. Good, right, so must stop. But we'll just say, if you're beginning, you may want to just do some little parts of things, go out in the garden or look at photos or whatever. Don't copy other people's work, try to avoid copyright. But just little sections of things to get used to the pen, get used to the way you want to put the colours on, use water-soluble one, just try all the different little aspects of buildings and or flowers or whatever you decide you're going to do. And before you get started. There's another one I did. And again, I put the pen on afterwards. And I was very brave with all the wiring on that one. But it adds interest, I think. I like it. This one had quite a lot of this water-soluble pen in it. So think about that. Think about putting different colours in than the colours that you see in your photograph. Keep it loose. Or you might want to do just a little section of something which will create a picture, but you know, make it a nice shape. Little vignettes of things always look nice with the nylon wash. Or if you want to stick with the flowers, there's lots of blossom around still, and it lends itself with a nice fine pen. Paint it first, put the pen on afterwards, and then leave some, but at the same time putting pen around other areas of the blossom. But when you've got a lot of flowers all together like that in clusters, using the pen will give you lovely definition where you might not be able to get it quite so well using just paint. So that's it. I think I've taken quite a long time. So enjoy yourself this week with the pen. It's a really useful technique to bring up the definition for, you know, a weak picture, or, you know, just to create a better focal point, whatever you want to do with it. But do try this technique this week, choosing your own subject, but use this technique, please. And I look forward to seeing what you do. Next week will be the beginning of a new set. So I feel I want to catch up with the flowers again, because I think we'll get frustrated if all these lovely flowers still continue to appear and we're not doing anything about it. So I'm going to demonstrate the loose and free technique, painting any flowers that inspire me. So have a lovely week, everyone, and I look forward to seeing what you paint, as usual. Do send. Bye.